participate. Predominantly, they were designers. I guess the feedback for us is we're going to target a bit more of the developer communities next year to get a bit more of that developer input. But we had a good feedback from the designer community, and then also people from other product delivery areas. In terms of age profile, it was predominantly in the mid-20s to 40 bracket. We had some outliers on either side, but that was where we had our predominant response category. There was a lot more male than female respondents, and what we noticed actually, and I'll come across later, we actually struggled to find females in the development community. It's actually, anecdotally, I manage a team of 17 developers, and there's one female on our team, and that's not from lack of trying, it's just from seeing the CVs that are coming in. So personally I'm seeing that as an issue, but we've also reflected that, that's been reflected in the report. And finally, one thing that I found quite encouraging was that there's always the publicity about the multinational companies, but in our results it was actually, there is 61% of the companies were indigenous Irish companies, and 39% multinational. So there is obviously a very large multinational presence in Ireland, but there is a strong indigenous industry as well. So one of the first key findings, we focused quite heavily, after speaking and doing the primary research with the industry, salary was kind of the thing that kept coming back to us as what people were most interested in and most wanted us to delve into. So that's where our survey actually reflected salary quite heavily. Of the kind of things to note, as Minister O'Connor already highlighted, there is a stark pay gap in some sectors between mid-20s and mid-30s, where women are being paid quite considerably less than men. What I'd like to do, particularly, and as Catherine mentioned earlier, as we grow and expand this report, I'd like to see if that trend continues over time, or if it was just an anomaly of the data that we collected. But it is quite worrying, and it's something that, as the Minister said, is something that they will look at addressing. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that we found that it's not quite linear, but it's almost a linear scale with age. And this was interesting because when we factored in education, it didn't actually make much of a difference. So whether a person was self-educated, whether they had a PhD, their age was a far better indicator of what salary they would be receiving than their education. And as it shows, it kind of increases almost linearly with age. We then split the salaries into designer-developer categories. The developer is probably more interesting. We actually didn't get a single response past, I think it was about 33 or 34. So it was quite heavily skewed. So below 30s, we had a 40% response rate between male and female. So the stats were a lot better below 30, but after 30, it just kind of teetered off. Some of the interesting things about movement, 60% of people in the past year received a pay increase. So that seems like we're exiting the dark days of the recession, returning back to growth. So that's positive, with an average of 7%. That figure surprised me because I did not receive an average of 7% in the last year. But that's what the data told us. And there was also 4.5% received a decrease. So what we noticed is a number of those were job movements, because they'd been in their role less than a year, but there were also some people who'd been longer than a year, obviously cutbacks in the industry or whatnot, but it is still quite a low figure, so not too worrying. Security was something that we were quite interested in, because particularly coming from the recent recession, where people were very negative about their job prospects and the security, we found that 94% of people were either very secure or fairly secure that their job was secure. But we did find 6% had low confidence, so they were actively looking for new roles. But it's quite a promising 94%. We then asked about non-monetary benefits. So we asked in two ways. We asked what they're being provided, which is in the report. So it was very much kind of, in terms of additional benefits that people receive, were still monetary. So it was contributory pension, car allowance, and other allowances. But when we asked about non-monetary benefits, the key things that people asked for was a meaningful role, Work-life balance came up very high as well, because the industry has a bit of a reputation for when things go wrong, it's all hands on deck. And career progression. So those were the top three. I guess fairly reasonably, career progression dropped off as age increased. So over 40s, career progression dropped out of the top three. But I guess that's to be understood. We then asked about Ireland in the future. So before we got into the challenges in the industry, it was kind of just challenges for Ireland. And the first thing, the number one thing that came back was affordability. So people are kind of getting squeezed by I guess it's in the news daily, the rising rents, the cost of living increasing. So affordability was an area that people said that they wanted. This section was really about what could Ireland do and the government of Ireland do for the industry. Second one was education, and this kind of came to the skills gap. It was that a lot of people are having trouble finding the right skill sets, and they feel that the education system isn't delivering the right skill sets for industry. So it was about redressing that and kind of making sure that the education is targeted at the skill set that are required for the 21st century. And one thing that people were very positive was at Ireland and how well it attracts jobs, but it was just keep doing it, keep more of the same, because it's obviously the higher quality jobs we have in the economy, it cross-pollinates into other industries. And then finally it was more support for indigenous companies and startups. So investing in early stage startups, investing in kind of Irish entrepreneurship, so that Ireland can build the next multinationals that other countries are looking to hire. So finally, we were looking at the challenges within the industry. The number one thing that came up for everybody was communication. So I'd say the human challenge, and I guess this is just a problem that happens on every team that I've ever worked on. It's unclear requirements, so communication from the customer to the team. There's communication within the team, so handovers between BAs, developers, designers, testers, QA. Feedback from testing, so people were flagging that they weren't getting enough, or the speed wasn't there, and the information when they were told the problems wasn't quite there. Managing stakeholder expectations and lack of customer buy-in. So those were other kind of communication problems that people were facing. The next biggest area was around resourcing. So this is kind of, I would say, the environment, less so about the individual project, more about the environment. So difficulty hiring talent, that was about 43% of people responded saying they had difficulty hiring the correct talent and missing skill sets. So the skill sets they were looking for just weren't in there in the market. And then finally, the other challenges that I'm sure people in the industry know, insufficient timelines, so everything is always condensed, try to get it out as quickly as possible. Inadequate hardware tools, so sometimes you need a particular tool set in order to do the job more efficiently. Inadequate team size and lack of research or data. So those were the kind of the key challenges that were highlighted. And I guess as a shameless plug at the end, that's where UX DX comes in. So our idea is about the conference is to accelerate product delivery and product success. So we've targeted those kind of key areas. Communication is probably one of the big areas that we'll be targeting. So it's about how do you get a self-sufficient team with all the skill sets necessary, designers, developers, QA, within a single team, and how some of the experts in the industry are managing this. So we have design thinking from IBM, the head of UX from BBC, the head of Internet of Things for Intel. So he's attacking a new market. It's market making as well as kind of trying to define the place in the market. And Ryanair from the point of view of their how they're converting, as they say, from an airline to a digital business that flies planes. So finally, for the meetup, we give a 20% discount for tickets. So welcome. And that's it. Thank you very much.